Hey guys, welcome. It's the final week. We're done almost. So for the 7 of you that are still participating, hey, this is it. Last week. Let's get started. Okay, first question. Differentiate between allopatric and sympatric speciation. Okay, so allopatric speciation is when there is a physical barrier that separates members of a single population. If you remember, a population is a group of organisms of the same species that they're the same species. They can breed with each other and produce fertile offspring. And some physical barrier, causes that population to be split up into two or more groups. Now, those smaller groups are more likely, if faced with different environmental conditions, to evolve in different ways than the main population. And this is called allopatric speciation. Speciation, the forming of new species. You see this in the Grand Canyon. It started out as a river millions of years ago, right? And over time, the river cut through the rock where the Grand Canyon is. It got deeper and deeper and deeper and wider and wider and wider. And so, for a species of squirrel or rabbit, rather that lives in the Grand Canyon, the rabbits on the north side of the Grand Canyon are a different species now than the rabbits on the south side of the Grand Canyon. They are thought to have evolved from the same species millions of years ago, before the canyon is what it is today. Now these rabbits have changed so much that they can no longer reproduce with each other, and that's called allopatric speciation. Sympatric speciation is when there is no physical barrier and they just evolve into different species anyway. This can be for a variety of reasons, but what you're really talking about usually is a change in resources. If there's abundant resources and abundant niches to fill, then these organisms, these members of the population, can find different ways to get food and survive, and therefore they can evolve differently based on what they're eating lots of times. So that's one way that happens. Okay, second question. Compare and contrast divergent and convergent evolution. So divergent evolution is when you have a single species and over time it evolves into many different species. Okay, a single species and it's evolving into many different species over time. So there's a divergence. Here it is, and it's spreading out, it's changing into different species. Divergent evolution. Convergent evolution is a little bit different. So in convergent evolution, you have organisms that are unrelated, so they're not genetically related, they're not similar species, but they evolve in similar ways. So, for instance, there's the moles, like we have in America, moles that are in the ground that make the tunnels through your yard. I hate these things. They're literally like my mortal enemy. I want to kill them, and I'm not a violent person, but I hate them. Well, in Australia, you have marsupial moles. Genetically unrelated, very different from a genetic standpoint if you look at them, but they've evolved in very similar ways, and they do like the exact same thing. They dig tunnels, they're eating grubs and worms and insects out of the ground, and, effing up your yard. Pardon my French. Okay. Coevolution. So coevolution is when two organisms evolve together in some kind of relationship. So this year we've looked at relationships that are symbiotic. They're long-term relationships that different organisms of different species have with each other. And so one of those is a mutualistic relationship, mutualism, when both species benefit. So there's a certain species of flower and a certain species of moth that have evolved together. These flowers are very long, like a foot long, and their nectar is way deep in the bottom of the flower. And these moths are the only species of insect or bird that can get the nectar at the bottom. So they have tongues that are a foot long. So that's super gross and disgusting and weird to think of a moth. Moths are gross to me anyway. I don't like bugs. But this one's got a foot-long tongue. That's disgusting. And it can drink the nectar out of the flower. And by doing so, it's picking up pollen when it lands, and it's pollinating these flowers and helping them reproduce. So they have evolved together over time in an extreme way. Another example could be, it's sometimes called an evolutionary arms race, where like a plant evolves a defense against an insect that eats it. So this plant evolves sort of chemical and odor or something that is unpleasing to the insect, and so the insect doesn't want to eat it anymore. But then some members of that insect population, they're sort of immune to that. It doesn't bother them. And so now they're getting to eat the food anyway. And so now they're the big, the strong, they're the most fit, they're the ones that survive and reproduce. So they evolve a resistance to that plant's defense. And then the plant will evolve another way to have a defense against those insects. And this happens over time, over and over and over. So they're co-evolving, but in a more parasitic way instead of a mutualism type of way. Okay, last question of the whole freaking year. Here we go. Describe the two theories that explain the rate at which evolution occurs. So there's two theories. One's called gradualism, the other's called punctuated equilibrium. Gradualism is what it sounds like. It's the theory that evolutionary changes happen very slow, gradually over long periods of time. Okay? A lot of evidence for this. Most scientists like this idea. A lot of evidence, most evidence, in fact, points towards this. But in the fossil record, there are periods that aren't explained by gradualism. And this led to the theory called punctuated equilibrium. Punctuated equilibrium theorizes that there are times that evolutionary changes occur very rapidly. So there's a large amount of rapid changes that happen in a relatively short period of time, tens of thousands of years. And they punctuate or start or end long periods of almost no changes. So long periods of almost no changes, and then boom, a lot of changes after that. Punctuated equilibrium. Guys, I've enjoyed our time together. I've enjoyed getting to talk to you every week. Love you guys. Miss you. Hope to see you next August or September. Okay? All right. Enjoy your summer. Enjoy your quarantine. All right. See you guys.